Welcome to the Scottsdale Vibes podcast. I'm Alicia Haygood, your host. Well, school is back in session, or it's about to be, and if you are like me and most other parents, we are very, very excited. I want to give a little disclaimer. We are recording this episode right before school starts. We have Dr. Scott Menzel with us today, and there is a lot going on here in the Scottsdale Unified School District. We always start our August episodes with him to really gear us into the new year. I say that we're recording early right here on July 29th because there is a committee meeting tonight that will obviously have answers that are past this episode. And there is a school board committee meeting on August 4th that is taking place. Again, this episode is already recorded before that information comes out too. So please be aware when you hear stuff. It could be a little timely, but we are keeping with the flow of there's a lot of information out there, and we are going to provide all of it to you that we have currently in this episode. Before we get started, though, let's talk about our favorite State Farm agent, Jeremy Mueller. Jeremy has been a part of the community for over 25 years, knowing the value of community. That's exactly what you'll get with him and his team. Jeremy has been serving local families and businesses for over 25 years in auto, home, life, and business insurance with 3 convenient Valley locations. He is always here to help, so give Jeremy a call at 480-515-5223 or visit him at jeremymueller.com. Well, we warmed up the seat for Dr. Scott Menzel. He's probably been in it more times than he'd like to, but we are excited to have him here at the Scottsdale Vibes podcast. Since joining SUSD in 2020, Dr. Menzel has led the district through a period of both achievement and significant change, with much more coming, as well as a focus on academic excellence, student success, financial responsibility, and really the long-term sustainability of our public schools. As the district begins another school year and continues important conversations about enrollment and the future of its campuses, that is happening nationwide, may I add, we're going to talk to him about how this new school year is going to start with already 2 schools closing, what phase 2 looks like, possibly phase 3, and what he, as a leader of this school district, is going to do to really close the gap on education and the money. So thank you for joining us. I always enjoy these conversations. As you are here, we have a bunch of kids in the studio because there's no school this week. So if you don't behave, I'm going to send them all home with you. I'm just letting you know.
Understood.
I really want to talk. Let's start with all the great things that are happening. I'm a glass half full person. Let's start with the first question. What is this year's theme going into the school district? Because I know you take all the teachers and administrative and staff and really focus on a theme. So what's the SUSD theme for 26-27?
So this year is a significant year for Scottsdale Unified. We're celebrating 130 years of serving the community.
That's crazy.
The district was founded in 1896 by Winfield and Helen Scott, and here we are 130 years later, still providing services to students in the community. So the theme is a legacy of learning. Okay. Over that 130 years, we have contributed in significant ways to the preparation of the future generations that have made Scottsdale what it is. And so it's really exciting to reflect on the past, to think about alum from Scottsdale Unified School District who have gone on to careers of distinction, who are making a difference in the world. We currently have 2 people in the U.S. Congress who are alum of Scottsdale Unified School District. We have people who have been successful in professional athletics and performing arts. We have people who are successful in businesses, CEOs, entrepreneurs, lawyers. You covers the waterfront, doctors, people who are making a difference. And so then we take that theme and think about the obligation that we have, the sacred trust to build on that legacy, to ensure that the students we're educating today are prepared to succeed tomorrow. And so that's our focus in this current school year.
The legacies, I love it. And we have a bunch of schools celebrating big year celebrations with that as well. To continue on kind of these accolades, we have a lot of accomplishments that our students have achieved as far as sports and arts. Talk about some of those awards that we have celebrated with our students, because I think that's a big thing to show our achievements as a school district, and as well as some of our schools. And we're going to talk about some of those schools that have been named A+ schools, and now they're on the chopping block. So I want to get into the accolades of the schools and the staff as well.
So we have, just for example, 6 students last year had perfect ACT scores.
Wow.
We have more than 20 national merit semifinalists and finalists. And so we have students who are distinguishing themselves that go on to Ivy League schools. They are also sometimes student athletes. And so some of our Desert Mountain girls softball students also are attending Ivy League schools playing at the next level, D1. So they're really smart and they're really talented athletically. The theater programs at both Desert Mountain and Chaparral received Gamage Awards this last year. So you can look up and down across our school systems, both in boys and girls sports, where we've won state championships at the 4A and the 5A level. And we continue to compete at the highest level because we have opportunities for students that are a product of community commitment to public education. Historically, the community has supported the schools. We have great facilities. We have outstanding educators. We have talented staff who are working day in and day out to ensure that our students have the opportunity to shine in all of those areas. So a commitment on academic excellence, on athletics and the performing arts in ways that not every school can boast. And so truly, it's a point of pride for our district to be able to share those success stories.
Well, it's important because that's not where the news is for Scottsdale. Arizona's ranked in the bottom, if not 50th, was the most recent poll I saw when it comes to public education in the entire country. And I know that the state as a whole is different kind of from Scottsdale, so let's focus on Scottsdale. We have 2 schools closing this school year. Echo Canyon K-8 and Pima are both closing. You've been through that. We are working through that. Now phase 2 is happening. And we have the Desert Mountain community up in North Scottsdale that's going to be closing next year, some of the schools. I want to start with question number 1. What is this committee that people have been referencing? How did people get on the committee, and what is the committee's responsibility? And I just want that basic question answered before we go into all the details about these 3 choices and the votes coming up and all of that.
So the committee was formed after we learned some and received feedback from families in phase 1 when the decision was made to close and repurpose Pima and Echo Canyon. And so we invited parents, community members, and staff members to apply to participate on the Phase 2 committee that would look at the different options that could be considered in order to ensure we have full and thriving schools.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of applicants. Those applicants were then screened for representation across the different schools. We wanted to make sure that every school was properly represented. There's a staff member from each school. There are multiple parents from each school. And then where we could put in other community members to ensure that they were represented, you think homeowners associations and others were invited to apply to serve on the committee. The principals of those schools are not on the committee, but they're generally in the room. And we had 2 other individuals who were invited to participate, not as voting members of the committee, but as important resources. One was a city council person who is a parent in our district, and the other is the dean of the Mary Lou Fulton College of Teaching and Learning at Arizona State University, who is a grandparent in the district. And so they both have a vested interest, and they're in positions of importance because thinking about how do you partner with the city, how do you partner with ASU, having their voice represented at the table we thought was important as well.
That makes sense. What was the committee's responsibility? Because they met. I know that our school, I am in the Desert Mountain community, so this is affecting us. I know that our school had a meeting about things, and really it was to kind of squash some of the rumors. Some of the things being said out there are the committee's the one making the decision about which schools are being closed, or they're telling you what to do, or you're telling them what to do. And honestly, the school board has more power than anyone when it comes. They make the final vote. What is the committee doing? What are these meetings about that they're having?
So the committee, actually, there were 2 parts. Part A happened during the school year, and that was a facilitated process with people that we hired to come in and facilitate. I attended the first meeting. I attended the last meeting. I didn't come to the other meetings because I wanted to avoid any perception that I was directing or influencing the specifics. But the charge at the time was to identify the different options. They actually, as a group, identified 8 different models.
Did they come up with these models, or were these models suggested? Like, how did these models come up?
The models come up from, the district had paid for a demographic study some time ago. We re-engaged the demographer to assist in looking at some of the scenarios that were possible. But the models emerged from looking at the buildings that we have, what the utilization is currently, what the capacity of the buildings is, and then what if we did X, Y, or Z. And so they explored those options, they tested different theories, and ultimately identified 8 potential models that could be viable. And at the end of that part A, they narrowed those 8 down to 3. And so in part B, over the summer, the charge was to look at those 3 and conduct a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then to identify potential boundary changes based on each one of those models, because with any change in a school district coming offline, you have to redraw boundaries. And so they were charged with doing an analysis of essentially the pros and cons of the 3 models, look at what the boundary options might be, And then also, if there were things that didn't fit neatly within that, they could flag those things. So we made a commitment that we would not introduce new models in the summer work.
Okay.
Because that would be a surprise to everyone who
Yeah.
contributed on the front end. At the same time, none of the models had a scenario where Laguna Elementary remained open, and lots of concerns from Laguna families about what that meant. And our reply to the people who raised the concern is that you can identify potential unintended consequences related to the models not including that for governing board consideration. To your point about who makes the decision, ultimately it's the governing board. We've not even asked the committee to make a recommendation. We've asked them to do a complete and thorough analysis, and they will identify which model they think makes the most sense from a committee perspective, so they may rank order them. But at the end of the day, all three models will be presented to the governing board for their review when the public hearing is held on September 22nd, provided that's the date they approve at the meeting on August 4th. That date is where the public will be able to weigh in on those three options. And then the board likely will act on October 6th to make a final decision. They might decide if they needed more information or more time that they could do it October 27th. But the commitment is to make the decision before open enrollment starts on November 1st.
Okay. When the committees come together, and we're gonna post those three options and go over them in just a second, but when the committee has them and they're presenting, who's presenting these solutions and what the committee's work has done to the governing board?
So Part B has been facilitated by three of my assistant superintendents, Ed Services, Elementary and Secondary Education. So they've facilitated the conversation. We have a lot of people who are gathering the data based on information requested by the committee members. And so they're put together in different groups, table conversation, where they're working through all of this in a facilitated fashion. But our team has been leading that. After tonight's meeting, you'll have the SWOT analysis that will be edited and fine-tuned, but will reflect the work of the committee and the preferences that they've identified based on boundary options as well as the models, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And by the middle of August, that will be shared with the governing board in written form. Then there'll be an information and discussion item on the September 8th board agenda.
Okay.
So that's where we'll spend a little bit more time hearing from the board what questions or concerns they have.
Okay.
And at that time, any member of the committee can choose to come and speak at public comment. If they're in the room and the board has specific questions where someone has input, they could do that. But as you may know, in Scottsdale, people have already been emailing the governing board with their thoughts about this. And so I expect that will intensify as we head back to school.
I would agree based off of every other meeting that's been happening for the past couple of years. Okay, I'm going to go over these three options that we've been talking about, and I'm going to read them verbatim for you. So option one is Redfield and Laguna close, and they would relocate the students to Cheyenne. Cheyenne would relocate to Copper Ridge Elementary, and then Copper Ridge would relocate to Desert Canyon Elementary Middle School, which I have also learned will be a K through 8 no matter what in these options. So that would become every option has a different savings as well, and we'll go over this. Option B would be the Desert Canyon Elementary Middle School closes. They move their students to Copper Ridge. Laguna also closes, moving the students to Redfield. Cheyenne would not change for now, with speculation that students would move to the Desert Canyon community in the future at some time. And then the third option is that Copper Ridge closes and the students move to the Desert Canyon Elementary Middle School campus. Laguna closes and students move to Redfield, and then Cheyenne remains the same. Each one, option A is almost $2.6 million savings, a $2.7 million savings for B, and then a 2.76. They're very close, but they all add up. So when we get down to these three options, and you're hearing the parents, like you said, reach out, all of these are going to change and affect families. How did we come up with these based off of the savings that each building is going to have, and how are we going to repurpose them? And then I want to ask you this because we're going to tie it in. The elections are coming up, and there's a bond, and that's asking us for money too to come out. And I want to know, if we're saving this many millions of dollars and you're asking for more for the bond, what else are you going to need from us to give up, is what I hear parents saying in the community.
Well, those are all good questions, and I might have to ask you to repeat a
That's
few
fine,
of them.
I know. They kind of all correlate as what it is. Closing these schools are
Mm-hmm.
savings, first and foremost. We're in a budget cut. And then I want to bring that into another thing that we're going to talk about is the bond, because that's more money for these
Right.
schools as well. So two different questions that kind of correlate to each other.
So let's start with the big picture. And it's just a reminder for everyone who's listening. Since 2010, the district has declined in enrollment by more than 6,000 students. So it's a historical pattern that predates COVID, actually predates 2010, but that's the number we've used. So over 15 years, more than 6,000 students. In that period of time, up until this current year, only one school had come offline. That was Tonalea Elementary. But 6,000 students represents 10 elementaries of 600 kids. Most of
That's
our
a lot.
elementaries don't have 600 kids.
Right.
And so what it means is that we have school facilities that are operating far short of their capacity. And so it's looking at the utilization rate. And for every building that you keep open, you have an overhead expense. That means money being spent to operate a building is money that can't be spent to pay people.
Okay.
So the focus of the governing board and the administration has been to get to a place where we have full and thriving schools. When you get closer to capacity, you're leveraging your resources, which are, we're bottom of the barrel in terms of 49th in the country of funding public education. We have to leverage every dollar to maximum effect. And when you're paying for schools that are significantly under-enrolled, that's money that can't be used to pay people. So Pima and Echo Canyon were the first, and in some respects, those were logical because both schools were under 300. And had been declining for a long time, and demographically there was...
That combined was making up one school when you look at the numbers.
There was really no path, and Echo was a K-8. So there being under 300 and a K-8, that was significant. So when you get into phase two, you had schools with low enrollment. Copper Ridge as a K-8 was at 441 last year. Right now they're under 400. And then you have Laguna, Redfield, Anasazi all under 400 or very close to 400, depending on when you were looking at the enrollment numbers. And so there were a lot of different potential configurations. We got the three based on conversation about all of those enrollment trends, the demographic study. And just to remind people, 20 to 25 years ago, all of those schools in the Desert Mountain Learning Community were full. Copper Ridge had more than 1,300 students in the early 2000s. And now
is that the newest elementary school?
So Copper Ridge as a K-8 was built in 2001.
Okay.
So we have rebuilds that were part of the 2016 bond.
Okay.
But that was the last final new building in our community. And at the time, everything was growing. So Redfield was full. And it was the product of a Zuni Aztec merger in 2008. Then you had Cheyenne Traditional that started in 1996 and had been at the Cholla campus, moved over into what was Aztec and continued to grow in that space. So we've seen full and thriving schools, and then demographically, about half of our enrollment decline is tied to fewer school-age kids and pricing young families out of the market in Scottsdale. So there's a demographic reality, and then there's a school of choice, charter, voucher environment that also results in parents making other choices. So those two resulted in a need to reduce our footprint. Not easy conversations, but really important so that we're investing in what matters most, and that is having high-quality teachers and support staff to ensure that our students have the best possible educational experience. No one wants to talk about closing schools. We know it impacts students, families, neighborhoods, the staff and community. But if you're spending money in keeping underutilized properties open, that's also not a responsible use of taxpayer resources from my perspective. And the majority of the governing board agreed that the conservative thing to do was to close two schools and look at reducing our footprint even further. And it's, again, not an easy decision, but really necessary if we want to position Scottsdale Unified for success in the future.
Yeah. I'll come back to the bond thing, but to follow up a little bit with you, what are we doing with Echo Canyon and Pima, right? I mean, they can't sit there and not be taken care of at some point because they'll be dilapidated, and then you're going to lose money on that.
So Pima, that repurposing decision was made already. We are bringing in-house special education services for some of the most severe disabilities, and these are students who were in private placement in previous years, and it was costing the district more than $2 million every year. Because we have space, we are going to bring those services in-house, and so instead of paying private providers, we're going to pay ourselves to operate those programs on the campus of Pima.
Okay.
We're also going to be moving nutrition services from the Oak Street campus over to Pima so that we continue to utilize that asset, which was a rebuild in 2016. Today, which is July 29th, we are having a community event, a back-to-school community event where students are coming in with their families to pick up back-to-school supplies. So that school will serve as a community hub and resource and provide educational experiences for students with disabilities. Our special ed staff moved over there from the Mojave District Annex, so it's got a purpose. Echo Canyon had a number of interested parties that submitted proposals for governing board consideration. To make the long story short, the board decided to hit pause and consider all of the repurposing. So whatever decision is made for phase 2, plus Echo Canyon, they want to think about that in its totality rather than rushing to a decision for Echo Canyon and then deciding later that wasn't the right decision, or maybe someone who was interested in Echo had an even greater interest in a different building that's coming offline. So to be very thoughtful about how we do that repurposing in the future, they decided to hit pause on Echo so that we can make an informed decision on all of the properties once the phase 2 decision is made.
Okay. These schools in the Desert Canyon are at most schools here in Scottsdale, I like it, and are very purpose-driven. So like Desert Canyon Elementary is Mandarin, right? You have the Panda program that's really big at Copper Ridge. Cheyenne is the traditional school. Redfield is the accelerated gifted program. Where are these programs going if the schools move or change or close? Because I know those programs were very important. That's why a lot of these parents go to those schools. So if we're combining schools where one school has and the other doesn't, how is that going to work for these students?
So it's an important point of distinction. So when we look at repurposing facilities, reducing our footprint, that's about a physical building, but not about a program. The district has remained committed to those programs, and so where they're located may shift based on the decision that's made in phase 2, but the commitment to the programs remain the same.
Okay.
So those services, those opportunities will continue to exist for students. They may happen in a different location, and that's part of the analysis that's being done by the phase 2 committee. If you were to move, so you mentioned in option 1, Cheyenne moving up to Copper Ridge. Part of that discussion is that Cheyenne for a number of years has had a wait list for kindergarten that they couldn't accept because they couldn't see that cohort through to fruition. Not enough space in their current location, but there would be space at Copper Ridge.
Okay.
But if you move them, you also have to analyze how many of the families that are going to the current Cheyenne location would consent to going up to the Copper Ridge location. It's a 6-mile difference, but for some families who are driving from out of district to go to the current Cheyenne location, that might put them too far. So again, those are the variables that are being explored to inform the decision the governing board will ultimately make. But we are committed to maintaining Cheyenne traditional. We're committed to the dual language immersion program, the Mandarin that's at Desert Canyon Elementary and Middle School. We're committed to supporting the gifted programming, the comprehensive gifted programming that's currently at Redfield. And we've got special education programs at virtually all of our schools.
Right.
And so the programs will persist. Where they happen may be different.
Okay. Another question that has come up about, I saw one survey that went out that said if or when these schools close, that I don't see any survey that came out with less than 50% of the parents that they would leave SUSD. What does realistically that look like based off of that verbiage coming out when Echo Canyon and Pima closed and the reality of when you saw those schools close, what does enrollment look like this year for where those kids and schools went?
So similar in the Pima and Echo Canyon case, we had a lot of parents who said,
I'm leaving.
What we found is that not more than 10% didn't re-enroll. Many from Echo Canyon, for example, were from out of district, and some traveled very far. And so it was not a surprise that they chose to go to homeschool closer to where they lived. There were some who said they're not coming and then have changed their mind and have enrolled in another SUSD school. And the truth is that closing a school has an emotional impact on people.
Correct.
And so you want to say, I'm just write off the entire district. I'll suggest that we have extraordinary schools within Scottsdale Unified School District, and if you have to drive past 3 of those to get to something else, then your decision to leave our district is really about being mad that we're closing the school that you were at, and not about looking at the other really good options that are available closer to where you live.
Right.
I also believe that reality comes into play, so that initial reaction to say I'm leaving may shift when you get tired of driving past 3 schools to get to the one that you've chosen.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do as a district is make the case that we can provide concierge level services to support the transition when the final decision is made. Until that time, we expect that families are going to advocate for what they care most about, and they're going to share that with the governing board. But when that final decision is made, there are going to be parents and schools that are impacted, and that decision won't sit well with some, but we're going to work to provide support for them, because I believe that you're going to get the highest quality educational experience that addresses the whole child. I mean, when you think about not just academics is at the core, and we are committed to a focus on instructional excellence this year. Our classroom walkthroughs and visits will be focused on ensuring that that's happening in every classroom every day. And you have athletics, and you have performing arts, and you have some extraordinary student clubs. When you go to some of these other educational options, they can't offer that full breadth of experience for students because they're too small, or they're niche, or they're nuanced in different ways. So we're positioned in a way to meet the needs of our diverse set of learners. And so we hope they'll choose Scottsdale. We'll continue to make that case.
To have, a good diversified set of learners, you have to have the teachers and staff to go along with that, right? What is going to happen to some of these teachers and staff administrators with the school closings if you don't have the classrooms to fill it? I assume mathematically that I didn't graduate in math, but that we don't need all the positions that we have right now.
So I think it's a really good question. We anticipated that there might be some surplus staff as a result of closing Pima and Echo Canyon.
Yeah.
And we identified a source of funding to provide some support in the year of transition. We said we would be able to retain all of those staff. Might reduce class sizes in other buildings, but no one would lose their job in phase 1. We didn't have to use any of those, the money that we identified in reserve, because with all of the retirements that we had, and people who left because they moved out of state, we were able to place all of the teachers.
Okay.
So it's hard to say for sure in phase 2 whether or not we'll have surplus staff, but we do have funding like we did for phase 1 to be able to provide a buffer year. And our goal is to be able to retain high quality staff. And if you're moving them to schools that you want to be full and thriving, we're not increasing class sizes to do that. The class size ratio is staying the same. They'll just be located in different schools. And so we're still going to have a need for most of those teachers.
We are going to take a short break and talk about Shawn Shackelton and the Shackelton Group, because as you heard Dr. Menzel say, we need more families in the school district to help us grow the schools and more. So Shawn's been with us here in Scottsdale for over 25 years, as she really knows the Scottsdale real estate. She's guided buyers and sellers with straight talk, smart strategy, and data that keeps you ahead of the market. So if you want a calm pro who won't let you settle for less, reach out to Shawn at 480-734-7277 or visit theshackletongroup.com and make your next move into Scottsdale a winning one. We are going to make this a 2-part series because we have so much more to talk about. So we tune in next week for Dr. Scott Menzel's second, where we're going to go into what phase 3 may look like, how this is going to affect us when it comes to transportation for these kids, after school care, and more, as well as what the future to not make these school closures continue to happen look like. So have a great week. Scottsdale will keep vibing, but come back next week to hear more from Dr. Scott Menzel.